Welcome to Mastering CS Candid Leader Insights, the podcast where we deep dive into the world of customer success with industry leaders. I'm your host, Irina Cismas, and today's guest is Karina De Alba, Head of Customer Success at Weglot. Karina, welcome, and thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
Excitement is what I have because you had an interesting career journey from being a dance instructor to co-founding a startup, diving into user experience, and now for 6 months leading customer success. I'm curious, what inspired you to make all these shifts, moving from user experience to customer success?
Well, I have to first say it has to do with the fact that I came from San Francisco, and in San Francisco, we love to do like 10 to 15 things all at once. We try to learn and do everything. And so I knew that within my personality, I can't do one thing and that's it. Like I felt, even when I first started with dancing, I was doing breakdancing for 15 years. I knew that that wasn't going to be my life. And so I was like, okay, I need to learn how to also be a paralegal. And so that way, when I'm done being a paralegal, I can move on and, keep growing and growing and growing in my career. So I have to definitely say it has to do with the fact that I grew up in San Francisco. That made me deep dive into all these different careers.
And how did you move into Europe?
So I actually backpacked. I decided that I wanted to leave everything behind in San Francisco since I grew up there. And I started backpacking down from Mexico to Central America to South America, stopped in Chile. That is where I started to do an entrepreneurship. It was kind of like the incubator. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to kind of do my own startup there. And so that's where I was learning entrepreneurship. And then I met someone, obviously, and he was from Europe. And I was like, why not add that to my resume? So I ended up.
What's Hubs America versus Europe? What are the pros and cons from a cultural perspective?
From a culture perspective, Europe is more close to my actual culture because I come from a Mexican culture. It's more family oriented. It's more about being a community, not shaming the US because I love the US. And I think they also have very inspirational ideas. You could do everything in America. So there's pros and cons on both sides, but I think Europe really caught my eye because of the community sense. I just feel like this is more my home. So I have to stay here.
Has your background in user experience, but also founding a company, shaped your approach to customer success?
I think so. I think it's really taught me the idea of empathy. When you're behind the scenes, you're being more reactive to what people need. I'm having an issue with your product. Can you help me out? It's always reactive. Whereas with customer success, it's now taught me to be more proactive. Like I'm the one reaching out. I'm the one saying like, hey, I see that you're stuck. Can I help you out? Mm-hmm. So I like it more because I'm closer to the user as opposed to before where I was just kind of waiting for them to write me and see how I can help them out that way.
Tell us about what you do at Weglot and what does a typical day look like for you as head of customer success now?
Well, like you mentioned, I am the head of customer success. It's a brand new branch. So I am on my own right now. So that means I actually got to build it from scratch, which is great because it means there's no rules. And it means that I get to kind of do what I want in a very professional way. And so on a typical day is kind of hard to say because it's never the same day. I try to really focus when I come in on reading all my emails, making sure that all the users that I've written to that have written me, respond to them, make sure everyone's taken care of. But I'm also doing a lot of research right now because it is a new role. I'm trying to educate myself as much as possible in terms of how can I make customer success really impactful within the company. So I would say it's very discovery right now, less on the terms of me being like, I have all these things set in place. Still, it's a learning process, but that's what makes it so exciting.
What was the tipping point when Weglot decided that they need a customer success organization? What was that thing that made them think it's time to have a CS in place?
It actually came from me because I was speaking to the head of sales and we noticed that there is an onboarding process, which is great, but there was room for enhancement. And I was like, wait a minute. There's no one really there, like taking care of the user. There's not really someone there, like carrying them through their journey. And so I thought, why not just put myself in that place since I already have the experience. I have a background in cognitive neuroscience, which helps me understand how people function, why they do certain actions the way they do, certain personality types. And so I thought, I fit. And so I asked the co-founders and they're like, yeah, why not? Let's make this a role. Let's start from scratch and see where it takes us.
Let's speak about the customers you are serving and what kind of challenges do they usually run into. And I'll use this just to set up the scene for my next question.
Okay, perfect. Well, our customers are pretty broad. We have everything from storefronts, small stores, to very big companies. We have entrepreneurs also. We have agencies. So we have a little bit of everything. Usually the challenge that they're running into is definitely having a translation service that is easy to use. And the minute that they get started, it's all set up. Because a lot of it, and there's a lot of training that gets involved in a lot of other, I think, services that people get kind of lost and they don't really have someone to refer to if they have questions other than a support team. So we're trying to enhance the onboarding and make sure that as soon as someone signs up, whether it's a starter plan, a beginning one to a big enterprise plan, we want to make sure they feel that their hand is held through the process.
A question about the onboarding I had at the pre-fair. Let's go deeper on how does it look like? And I'm assuming you also worked in the past from your role as user experience into the onboarding. How did you tweak the onboarding process?
Well, the thing is with onboarding, since we are self-service, we let the user kind of guide themselves. We're not immediately hey, how can we help you? We kind of help them out by giving them the tools that they need. And then from there on, we say that our support team is one of the best support teams that we have. We try to help them immediately, whatever the situation is, we're right there. We answer them within 2 hours. So we're really proactive. But the way that we enhanced it was by being able to catch any kind of help that we can give them beforehand, before they come to us and say, hey, I'm stuck. So my job is to make sure that I can kind of see the health score, see if they're, making a translation. If they're not really moving in their project, I immediately dive in. I'm like, hey, if you need a call, let me know. I try to make myself as available as possible.
Are you at this moment a one-man show? Or are you handling all of the CS operations by your own? Okay.
I'm a one-woman show over here. I wish I had a team, but not yet. The thing is, I didn't want to set a team in place until I had a concrete base. I think it's only fair that we bring people on board once everything is set in place. We have, all the pillars in place, like I keep saying. But for right now, I'm a one-woman show.
Well, I think your approach is actually fantastic because a lot of the CSMs with whom we are talking, they jump and they hurry into implementing stuff or bringing people into the team without having some clear processes in place. And also when you are building a team, I think it's very important to understand what do you need? What roles should I bring into a team? Because every organization has its specifics. So speaking about that, after only 6 months, what roles do you have in mind? How would your CS team look like in the future?
I think definitely account managers, they're so precious. They're, people that can actually stick to a certain clientele, like having different account managers for different personas, different types of backgrounds when it comes to the company type. I think ideally that would be something that I would really want to stress because every different persona has a different need. And so you can't kind of put all the same needs into one company. It's not going to work. So I would definitely work on having account managers, making sure that they specify themselves to each persona. And then after that, I think having a really good training program when it comes to communication, empathy, and product knowledge, just making sure that they really know what our values are. And that way that we all have the same mentality when we come into place and, we're all on the same level.
Since you are a one-man show, because you are managing the whole portfolio on Weglot, I assume you rely a lot on automation. Is it true or false? How does automation come
I'm a little bit more old school when it comes to automation. I think it's easy when you start this role that you want to A, automate, and B, make sure that you have all these different technos behind helping you out. And, I'm going to store my customers here. I'm going to keep the conversations here. I'm going to, do A, B, and C over here. I don't want to do that because I'm going to get too confused. It's too much for me. So I like to just centralize it and keep it maybe on 3 technos maximum. And that way I'm still hands-on. I still write users. I still use my Gmail. I want people to still feel like it's got a personal touch to it as opposed to being automated.
Okay, but do you think it's realistic? How can you scale it? How does a scaling plan look like at this stage?
At this stage, it's realistic because the customer base is still pretty low for me. Like I don't have a lot of people getting back to me just yet. I don't have hundreds of people. So it's really realistic. But I can admit that at a certain point, maybe in a couple months, it's not going to be realistic anymore. Like I'm not going to be able to answer to 200 to 300 emails a day. So then we have to think about, automating a little bit more. And so that's something more in the future.
You mentioned that this role started from an interaction with a person who is handling the sales operation. How is the collaboration in this moment?
It's actually great. I have a great collaboration with the sales team. The best thing about this role is that I'm kind of cross collaborating everywhere with the data team also. It's amazing because it's like I said, it's never the same day. If one day I have a project with the data team, the next day I have another project with the sales team. So in terms of how our communication is and how our workflows are, it's a really positive experience. And I have to also say that it enriches my role because I don't feel like I'm working alone. I honestly feel like I have a team. It's everyone helping me out.
You are very lucky because one of the challenges I hear from a lot of head of CS is that they are struggling to prove the internal value of the CS. They don't have the leadership buy-in. How did you navigate those initial conversations? And how do you prove the value of what you do in front of your, I would say, peers, but also in front of the CEO and other leadership team members?
When I was doing the user experience part, I was actually directing the support team. It was me and my co-head, Chris, at the time. We were both directing them. So I was really engaged in dealing with all the support and, putting in all the processes. And what we decided to do was periodically we would have everyone from the office help out in terms of doing support tickets so that they could see how we help users, see what kind of problems they're having. So then on it branched off to us explaining we needed customer success in order for them to have a onboarding to make them feel that they're already valued from the beginning instead of them being just valued when they have a problem. So everyone from the office was able to see that not only do we need support, because obviously when people have questions, but customer success is also really important because there needs to be someone there to help them out from the beginning. Like if you buy a product, you want to kind of know how to use it. You want to navigate through it. You want to feel comfortable knowing that there's someone there that's going to help you. And so bringing that value and showing it to everyone in the office, it made it really easy for them to accept it and say, okay, yeah, we really need this. And also when we talk about the product, sometimes there's some people that weren't aware of certain features. And so, I told them if there was a customer success person that would have invited you, then we've been able to show you that. And so I'm pretty lucky to say that everyone sees the value in this role.
I'm curious, what did you do in your first 6 months? How did you approach this role? What were your first things when you said, okay, starting with today, I'm head of customer success. Okay, I'm like a CEO at my own company. I don't have a mini company, I do a bigger company. So I set up your role. How did you approach it?
I have to say that I was driven by a lot of fear. I was completely scared. I was like, okay, what did I just get myself into? I was completely great in my role, my previous role. But the problem was that I was too settled in and I felt like I needed something exciting. So I used that fear, switched it to excitement and was like, okay, what do we need to get started? And the first thing I did is that I got myself a mentor, someone that kind of had more experience in the CSM world. Immediately, she guided me through. She said, okay, let's start basic. We're not going to go crazy and start implementing a million things, which is great because I didn't want to do that. And the first thing that we started on was onboarding, which is still my biggest focus right now because it's the the first step from everything. That's kind of where I've been at. I've been doing a lot of research, been with my mentor, and really making sure that the onboarding process is really straightforward.
And speaking about the onboarding process and starting from scratch, what were the data points that were important for you? What data are you collecting or reporting to, or are your North Star metrics in order to make sure that what you are building is heading on the right direction?
Right now, the metrics, they're pretty basic. They're basically the response rate. What are people actually responding to my messages? We're trying different methods. Like one is I'm reaching out immediately when a user signs up. Like, for example, if a user signs up and doesn't have a project on their account, I reach out and I say, hey, do you need help? Let me guide you. My biggest KPIs are definitely onboarding, churn prevention, and retention.
Okay. What comes next after onboarding on your agenda? After you solve the onboarding issue, what will be your next big projects that you want to tackle?
I'm definitely moving on to retention, because once they're onboarded and they're great, we got to make sure they stay on board, and we got to make sure that they're happy with the product, that they see the value in Weglot, and that way they'll be able to stay with us further.
Because you do have a technical background at some extent, I want to ask you, how do you see the role of technology in scaling the CS operations? But to be more specific, also the role of AI into the whole schema.
I think AI is something amazing. It's something that, we should put into our role. It's kind of silly to fight it because it's taken over so much. And I think it's important that it becomes part of our role. But right now, I'm not really using it when it comes to dealing with users. I'm relying more on, my own human skills, my empathy skills, my soft skills, basically. So long term, of course, AI is already a part of Weglot. So that's already been integrated. But integrating into customer success itself, I haven't planned that out yet. But I think definitely it's going to play a role.
One more question for you. Because I realized that you basically started in this CS environment 6 months ago. What would be your advice for everyone who is considering to step into this domain of customer success?
I think that's a great question. Don't be afraid. I think fear is a great way to drive yourself to do something that every day will be different. You get to use all your different skills. You saw my background, and I get to use all my different skills in different situations, different scenarios. So if you're just getting started, it's going to be okay. Make sure you do a lot of research, but really try to make it your own. Don't try to copy someone else's. I don't try to do that anymore. I'm just like, let me make it my own, use my own skills, and you're going to do great.
Thank you so much, Karina, for sharing your insights with us today. And a big thank you to all our listeners. Until next time, stay safe and keep mastering customer success.